Apply for up to 1.5 million Rand in business funding from Vodacom today. Future Fit, helping you grow your business with Vodacom. The days of waiting in lines to see a banker about a loan are thankfully over. Wasting time is a dreadful process that left many of us pretty peeved off, right? Now with technology, everything is at your fingertips. You can apply for business funding on your phone, be it on an app or a website. Applying for loans has become much more convenient, and that means saving time to focus on the important things like getting your business off the ground, or if you already have one, growing it. Mariam, thanks so much for speaking to us. So what is digital business funding?
Funding is the lifeline of any growing business, and sometimes access to funding can be a major obstacle, particularly in the SMME sector in South Africa. And the need for small businesses funding has become more intense in recent years. I think given the recent pandemic as well, it's become even more important. But for many SMMEs out there, finance is often required quickly, and access through traditional routes can sometimes be too cumbersome and slow. So this is exactly where digital business funding solutions can come into play. In the fintech space, we ensure that funding applications are done online, quickly, and without excessive paperwork. And this means that faster funding decisions for businesses, less paperwork, and in a fully end-to-end digital process really helps to enable the application process.
So tell us how one can actually access digital funding.
In the digital funding space, a typical process involves a simple application process, and applicants receive approvals in less than 24 hours, sometimes as little as 4 hours. And generally, complex annual financial statements are not required. And if approved, funding is disbursed within a day or two into the bank account of the applicant. The requirements in most instances for digital funding are not onerous. However, this also depends on the size of the loan and the type of business that is requesting or requiring the funding. Registered businesses are required to have a reasonable track record of consistent trading, generally, around 12 months, and some institutions require a minimum turnover level for access to be financed. So we see very different business models at work, and we should be able to adapt our funding to meet those business requirements.
Now, it can be done at your fingertips, right? But you still need to have important information at hand. What's required?
Businesses applying should generally, I'd say, at a minimum, have the following ready when applying for business funding. Definitely the registration number of their businesses, if their businesses are registered. A good credit standing, because ultimately, it's linked into credit bureaus, it's linked into other types of credit information out there, which will help to dictate whether, the entrepreneur, the CEO of the business has a good credit standing. And then generally, I'd say a lot of business funders look for some sort of minimum turnover that the business can demonstrate. Generally, I'd say about 500,000 Rand a year is typically what the threshold above which business funding starts being considered. So I'd say those three pieces of information are quite important.
If you're actually struggling to get funding from these online platforms, would you advise a face-to-face application?
Digital funding by its very nature is done remotely and online to avoid delays and complicated verification procedures. But digital lenders also realize that business owners are not robots, and that sometimes things could get lost in translation, and sometimes that face-to-face or engagement is required. So in most cases, these secondary queries are then dealt with through a professional call center, where you've actually got a human being on the other side who can, speak to and listen to the applicant and maybe walk them through the journey or understand where they're experiencing a problem in the journey. And this also helps us to improve the algorithm and the journey going forward.
Thanks so much for your time, Mariam. Really appreciate the insight you gave us into the business digital funding world. Grow your business your way with up to 1.5 million Rand in funding from Vodacom. Future Fit in association with Vodacom.